Good morning. So, thank you, everyone, first of all, for taking time out for this discussions. I welcome all the esteemed leaders to our roundtable discussion today on how companies can leverage Gen AI to solve the large and complex, as well as the unresolved problems. We know today the rapidly evolving business landscape, especially on the intersection of advanced AI technologies and complex challenges that presents the unprecedented opportunities for all of us to do the more and more innovation and problem solving, right? So we have, as we gather today here on this forum, we aim to explore the potential of generative AI in addressing the intricate, persistent issues across all the various industries. So we all are coming from the different industries with different backgrounds. So together we will try to dwell into the strategies, insights, and best practices that can empower our organizations. So that will help us to harness the transformative power of AI, obviously to drive the meaningful change and achieve the breakthrough solutions. So let's embark this collaborative journey together on the of the exploration and discovery. Thank you for joining us today. With this context setting, maybe I would like to start with a first question. Before that, let me just take a moment to introduce all of us here on the call. My name is Vidyadhar Joshi, and I work for Schneider Electric. I will be one of the moderators along with Sahil Makkar, who is working with Happiest Minds. We have six speakers lined up today on the roundtable. Sekhar Madula, leader in AI and innovation. Sridevi Vadapalli, working with Daimler Truck, the Innovation Center of India. Biju Kalleppilli, SAP Labs, India. Raj Sadasivan working with Jana Analytics. And Charan Rao working with Rakuten, India. And Vinay Advani working for Cognizant. So I welcome all for this discussion today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vidya.
Thank
And
you,
then,
Vijay.
glad. While we are raising this round of discussion today, when you are starting for the first time, I would request all of you to introduce yourself in one or two lines, the possible. So with this, maybe I would like to pick up Raj for the first question. Raj, what do you think that today how can companies seamlessly integrate Gen AI into their problem solving processes?
Thanks, Vidyadhar. Really happy to be part of this esteemed group discussing about Gen AI today. Yes, so my name is Raj Sadasivam. I'm a partner in a startup called, it used to be called Jana Analysis, but now we have rebranded ourselves as Spirit DGX. We are into IT services, including data analytics. I have about 25 plus years of experience, of which last 10 years into data analytics and AI. And I'm also an independent consultant. So regarding your questions, I'd like to take the group through the entire process of how, at least I would suggest on going about integrating Gen AI in the workspace, right? So first, we need to define the problem because sometimes we lose the sight of the problem. But define problem definition and scoping the problem is what sets the context for the entire journey. Set clear objectives, whether you're going to improve your top line, your bottom line, customer satisfaction, or your employee satisfaction. Pretty much all AI projects, I think, would fall in one of these buckets, one or more of these buckets, right? So see what is going to be affected and how it will be a sense of direction and data. What data you're going to use for your training, for training the model based on your use cases, and check for the data quality for any biases, etc., and ensure that it is very representative. choose appropriate model, whether it is GPT for text or GAN for image generation. It's something that you need to choose based on, again, your problem definition and your objectives. Do the data pre-processing. You train the model based on training parameters. It could be pre-training, fine-tuning, or RAG, based on your problem statement and your requirement. Once you train the model, you start evaluating the model and giving feedback loop to the data and as well as the training part of it, which is very key because this will ensure that model meets up to your expectations. And then you integrate it with the other apps through APIs. Once you integrate it, you can start measuring the ROI, how your model is performing, what kind of benefits it's giving. Is it going according to your expectation, measuring up to your metrics, etc. Something that you need to do. So once it is operational, you still need to monitor it with a dedicated team and see if it throws up any biases, any hallucinations, giving up false information. Are there any ethical issues that comes up? Those kind of things need to be continuously monitored and reported and corrected accordingly. So you start the project at a small level and then scale it up to larger use cases and larger scale problems. I think these are the 10 to 12 steps I would follow and in integrating Gen AI into the workspace.
Thank you, Raj. I think that was quite enlightening. The way you covered from the using RAG models to training, retraining these models, and also coming up with kind of how to operationalize it, kind of manage it with the full team support. I think that's very, very important. And you have covered end-to-end journey, how typically you can seamlessly integrate Gen AI into problem solving process.
Right.
And before I move to next question, I'll introduce myself. My name is Sahil Makkar. I'm a senior director at Happiest, and I lead a few AI teams, and I have total 18 years experience. I'll move to next question, and I will request Sekhar to take it up. As Raj, you have set up the context by putting the end-to-end process of integrating. Now, I think we'll move to next question, and the natural next question that I have is, which specific industries can leverage the AI, Gen AI, and how their problems can be solved? And Shekhar, it would be really helpful if you can cite some examples of some industries, some sectors, and within those industries, if there are specific functions like marketing, supply chain, or maintenance, there can be multiple functions happening there. Which particular these sectors, some industries can benefit from Gen AI? Shekhar,
Okay.
over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sahil. Hello, everyone. This is Sekhar Madula. I have roughly 2 decades of IT experience. And right now I'm working as an independent consultant, guiding few of the products to turn them into a world-class AI solutions. So coming to the question, I would like to answer this question in a little bit different way. Wherever we are using the human intelligence or the innovation and creativity, all those places we can think about some sort of an application with respect to Gen AI. That's how I would like to take it up. So if we step back a little bit, we all are doing jobs in some or the other domain and industry, and every day we are taking some sort of a decisions or some sort of a creativity we are adding, and that's how all of our jobs, not only this forum, for that matter, everybody, whoever are working in their respective domains, is that's how their day-to-day life is going on, right? And generative AI is especially of great prominence because of its creativity and its ability to generate something new. So wherever we as a human are doing our day-to-day operations, we can think about some sort of an application with respect to Gen AI. Now, if I need to add another aspect to another dimension to this, the thought process, right? We all are doing this decision science, or we are taking a number of decisions every day. Now with this Gen AI, I would recall it as a decision engineering is going to be revamped in the near future. So when I say the decision re-engineering or decision engineering, instead of a human taking some sort of a decision, a Gen AI model or a Gen AI tool or a Gen AI agent is going to sit in his or her place, and it's going to add its own value. Now, which specific domain it could cater to? I would say every domain. I'm not saying this domain would take it up, would apply more, or other domain would apply more. I don't want to make any statement of as such. Every domain, whichever requires certain degree of either creativity or a decision making, is the apt places for evaluating Gen AI. Across different levels, maybe the degree of application may change a little bit here and there, but otherwise, every domain, every role has a serious application with respect to Gen AI. Now, how best we can do it, or which sort of a use case to be taken up first or something like that, that all depends on the artistic factor of identification of a use case for that respective domain. So if I need to explain this with a little bit of an illustration, as Sahil was asking, for example, if we are talking about marketing, let me take up something which is quite obvious and everybody can easily try to understand, right? We are getting so many image generation tools or softwares in Gen AI, and with excellent prompt engineering skills, we would be able to generate a very good marketing campaigns or marketing material, and we could use it. And for example, if we are talking about finance, starting from anomaly detections, fraud detections, to approving or underwriting activities, everywhere we see the aspects of applications of Gen AI. Even if we talk about legal, we have the places where validation of the legal documents and all those things are already, people are working on it, and I know few of the startups working in those dimensions already. So putting my answer in a nutshell, I feel every industry, irrespective of the levels, wherever a human is operating, operating with some sort of innovation or decision making and intelligence, are all the use cases that we can, all the scenarios that we can think about application of Gen AI.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sekhar, for this perspective. Definitely, a couple of points what you clearly mentioned and called out. The legal compliances is one of the really key for when we go for the Gen AI deployment and adoption. And also, you mentioned very well that how the startups are really leveraging the power of Gen AI today, uh, using various technologies and methods while abiding in the same data security and privacy framework, right? Thank you so much. So maybe with this, I would like to go to Sridevi with the next question. Sridevi coming from Daimler Truck. So maybe I'll have a specific question, Sridevi, for you. So could you please provide maybe some of the examples how the companies in the today's automotive industry, right? So we know that today automotive industry has, I mean, where it was and today where it is. So considering the huge changes the way automotive industry used to work earlier, and now today how they are delivering value to the customer, taking care of each and every element while delivering for the customer experience. How do you think that this automotive industry have successfully leveraged Gen AI, such as maybe design optimization, maybe manufacturing process improvements? Supply chain is one of the key critical element when it comes to any business, right? So to address all these substantial or the persistent challenges, uh, maybe if you can share your thoughts and ideas around that.
Sure. So, hello everyone. My name is Sridevi. I take care of big data, advanced analytics, AI in Daimler Truck based in East Bangalore, and about 20 years of experience in data science across industries. I would say like finance, retail, and automobile has been my latest stint. So, coming to the question, Vidyadhar, if you have noticed, automobile has been one of the uh, later parts they have adopted, I would say, more analytics and the advanced AI and Gen AI concepts. However, they are not far behind. So there is various transformations that is happening within automotives to be able to use AI, to leverage AI and Gen AI for transforming the way it operates, to speed up manufacturing processes, for bringing in efficiency in the processes of manufacturing, to be able to take care of after sales. So there is a lot of AI that is being used. And of course, for enhancing the quality of the automobile parts specifically, right? So there's a lot of AI that is being deployed in across automobile industries. And the primary use of Gen AI that I'm seeing in the automotive industry is in the area of product design, because what was not earlier possible was to be able to come up with newer concepts of design. And with Gen AI having such powerful engines of creating something new, learning from the past, I think that has been one powerful step of using Gen AI in the product design concepts. And then there is also the idea, and the most easily adoptable Gen AI use case has been the customer queries and customer answers that you would want to give back. So that's one specific area as well. While I cannot quote a lot of use cases from the automobile industries, I would like to probably give one which I have recently come across, in fact, two which I have recently come across, very, very unique use cases of how Gen AI has been used. One is Gen AI has a capability to transform a hand-drawn sketch into something very realistic. So the fashion industry is actually trying to use a lot of these Gen AI, where they just do a rough sketch of a design they have in mind, and Gen AI can very nicely transform it to a real image and see how it would look like as a product in the real space. So that's one area where I have seen Gen AI very uniquely utilized as well. And the second space, which I think one of the first examples of Gen AI use case in the industry that I have seen, is in the education sector, where I am sure you've heard of something called Khanmigo, and they have put Gen AI to the use of not directly answering to a student's query on something they're unable to answer, but like a teacher or a mentor would guide somebody and prompt them to come to the right answer, Khanmigo actually tries to do the exact same thing as a bot. So it won't directly give you an answer, but it kind of prompts the student to think, be curious, and get to the answer eventually. So that's a very unique way I think Gen AI is being put to use. There are many, many use cases like Sekhar, Virgin Voyages, which has come up with a very light-hearted advertising using Gen AI, and they use Jennifer Lopez in that, so they call it Gen AI with a J, right? Like Jennifer Jen. So very interesting use cases around the industries and around the globe. Something that automobile industry is also trying, but I'm not in a position to venture and tell you what those things are. But it is across the life cycle of automobile industry, where quality is trying to use and understand how parts fail, and analyze the issues of parts based on the complaints that come across about processes in manufacturing that can be, kind of bring in more efficiency in that space. And of course, the after sales and sales areas as well. So, and product design, like I mentioned. So, across the life cycle of an automobile industry, there is AI and Gen AI that is being thought through and being utilized.
Thanks. Sorry, if I have a permission to add one comment to
Yeah, please.
what Sridevi has detailed.
Sure.
My daughter is really using OpenAI in understanding her math problems, and she's actually using it instead of calling her teacher or dropping a WhatsApp message to her teacher. She's leveraging ChatGPT. So, just thought of adding.
Wonderful.
So we know, Sekhar, today's generation itself is ahead of Gen AI. Yeah, or especially the Gen AI adoption, we can say that. Yeah. So definitely, thanks, Sridevi. Thanks. Definitely, a couple of pointers what you mentioned, addressing the customer queries, customer concerns, making sure that we hear their voice and improve our product, service, and processes. Right. So it's a critical part of any business element in that matter. With this, maybe I will go for the next question to Biju. Biju, today ethics is one of the critical element when it comes to Gen AI, right? So, what are the ethical considerations that you think that the companies or the organizations should really consider, uh, and then meticulously account for when deploying all the Gen AI or for any problem solving, right? Especially Gen AI organizations tend to go for the complex problem solving. So, in this scenario, how do you think that the ethics plays a role in Gen AI?
Sure, Vidya. So before I start off, let me introduce myself. My name is Biju Kalleppilli. I lead the performance engineering of cloud applications of SAP. And I'm with SAP for the last 18 years. I have roughly around 25 years of industry experience. So as you said, this is a very important topic. So anything that goes wrong, in this aspect, when we adopt Gen AI, have negative impact on many things, including organization design and the work that we have. So there are several considerations. When I can talk about few of them. Foremost, I would say it's data privacy and security. So we are utilizing massive data to train algorithms, and it's very important to protect individuals' informations. So the one way to address this is to having a clear guidelines on an ethical framework to use these data and adhere to the GDPR guidelines, data privacy safeguards that's available. And another main important point is how we get out of this algorithmic bias. There can be many sorts of bias, can be historical biases or maybe representative biases. So how can we address these biases? Even by deployment of the application, there can be bias because if the model is used differently from the intended purpose, if end users do not use the model as intended, it can give you biased results. So how do we address this? So again, developing frameworks for responsible data collection and pre-processing. So this involves several methods like bias detection, designing algorithms that can reduce bias during text generation, etc. The third point is more about bringing transparency and accountability, right? Your model shouldn't be a black box. It has to be interpretable, and it should be able to explain and provide transparent insight to the end user. That's also an important point to be taken into consideration. At the end, the human should have oversight and control on your models. So human judgment should override whatever decision that's been made. So we as humans should be able to intervene and rewrite things that is recommended by AI if needed, whenever that is necessary. Safety and reliability is another point. We have seen the accidents in autonomous vehicles, in medical diagnosis. It is very important. So we need to have priority for safety measures. We should have rigorous testing processes. We should implement fail-safe mechanism, etc., to improve on this point. Societal impacts. We should, as developers, assess potential risk and the consequences on society. It should not harm the environment. It should not have any negative impact on humanity as a whole or for future generations. It should not encourage unethical behavior. So solution is to have regular monitoring, some sort of impact assessment and feedback loops with the stakeholders to identify and address these kind of issues. So probably finally, the most important thing is the regulatory compliance as well. So it should not discriminate or harm the safety of the people. So because Gen AI can generate content that may infringe even on the IP and copyright laws. So we have to ensure that this content respects all frameworks and the IP laws that is around, and it's not also violate the right of the content creators. So these are some of the ethical considerations we need to take care while we design Gen AI applications as a whole.
Thank you, Biju. It was quite insightful. The way you put up the entire journey from ethical to the copyrights and everything you covered, right? And one specific point that you covered is about reliability, right now. And I will pick that the context that you set up, and I'll request next question to Vinay. And my question is exactly on the reliability and the robustness of the model. If you've been hearing, right, sometime model hallucinates, sometime it gives wrong answer. It may give you 2 or 3 options to pick up, right? Let's say if you go to Chat GPT now, right? So the answer that you're getting there, you can actually control because you're seeing it. But now, since the OpenAI has kind of those APIs, Microsoft, now Gemini is also come up, right? They're also coming with some kind of APIs. Now, with this kind of background, right? But when this APIs come, right, it has to be in the background, kind of make that decision, and the system next, which has to kind of maybe some other pipeline will be there, which has to pick up answers from the generative AI, right? How can I make it more reliable to make it integral part of that decision system? That's the kind of I think I would like Vinay to request if you can put some light on it.
Sure, thanks. Hey, hi, I'm Vinay Advani. I'm with Cognizant right now. I lead their one of their AI/ML COEs. We work on internal initiatives, and that's what my team has been doing. I'm a relatively new entrant to the AI space, probably 5 years, but working with analytics for almost 20-25 years now. And coming back to your question, see, I think the key thing which came out of this whole requirement to have very reliable answers is where RAG, was born, or is the resource augmented generation, where basically you were telling Gen AI that I don't want you to answer from your knowledge bank that you have been trained with, but I'm going to tell you where you need to answer from. So we are essentially using it more from their language skills and other purposes than really for what it's been trained on. So that's probably one of the things which kind of answers your questions when you talk about reliability. But then we need to go beyond that. So you do have advancements coming in from models which are trying to ensure that the data is more up to date and it's more reliable. Even if you look at Bing today, it gives you an answer. It cites where it's coming from, so at least you have the option of going and checking that answer if you're just doing some kind of browsing and just trying to look for answers. But let me just come to the bit about how we're going to use this internally in an enterprise and how do we ensure that it is more reliable. Now, of course, with RAG, to a large extent, it's fairly straightforward because you are essentially using a combination of traditional AI, if I may call it that, and generative AI to give your answers. The traditional AI bit is where you do things like, on a more technical note, vector embeddings and so on. So basically, when you're giving the context to generative AI, it is very tight. And then you also set, change certain settings. You said temperature should be low. Don't get too creative. Just answer from here, and you tend to get the right answer, and it's something which is grammatically correct. But let's also look about what else you can do. So there are ways in which we can use technical methods using Python or any other language or other libraries also, where you can actually compare answers. Now, for example, I can actually compare the answer generated or an article generated with the original article. I can find what percentage of it is a match, and that's where I will be able to set a threshold limit and say, hey, only above this, let it go. You have a number of such use cases. So another one is where you're basically trying to read images, translate them, and do something with that information. And you have a library like a blur index, so it'll tell you if the image is really clear or not. And below a certain level, then obviously the percentage of you being able to have confidence will start coming low. So you have multiple such ways of doing it. So the key thing is how you go about implementing it. Like many of my esteemed colleagues have mentioned here, you basically need to start small, start with a pilot. Make sure that you have an enormous amount of bandwidth for testing, because unlike other traditional tech solutions or even AI solutions, you probably need a lot more time to test a generative AI solution. So that's something you may want to take care of to ensure reliability. And like everything else we do in the tech world, ensure your data is reliable. That's like half the battle. Once you get in the right data, you're going to obviously have more reliable solutions.
Yeah, thank you, Vinay. That was quite insightful, and the way you have covered the RAG model to testing, and the keeping the data clean, because otherwise, if you don't have the data clean, first of all, that this kind of ecosystem, right, garbage in, garbage out, and even in your RAG model, it will become a foundation. And with the testing, as you know, quite kind of put a lot of stress on the testing. I think that is the way to go. And maybe with the RAG models, typically people are also looking at the fine tuning these models, right, to their context, so that it kind of restrains. Ultimately, if you see, Gen AI is more of, I will say, uncontrollable beast. It is having very, very large data. It can pick up the answers from anywhere. But with the RAG and the testing, it's a kind of way to go. So with this, I will, next question I'll move to Sekhar. And the typical, Gen AI, the first kind of technology where we are saying, we have the kind of solution already available, but we don't have the right problems to solve. And ultimately, if you see any industry or any kind of startup you're gonna do, ultimately you're gonna find a problem and then getting a solution, right? And so far, before Gen AI, we had a problem and then we're trying to find a solution. But now the tables have kind of turned down, and we are saying, first, now I have a solution, but I need to find the problems, right? So typically industry is at a stage where they are trying to find more and more problem. Every company, someone are saying, I have 300 use cases. We are working on the marketing side, supply chain side, maintenance, and finance and whatnot, right? Getting the contract insights, even JD creations. And at tech industry have also learned about this kind of AI assisted learning, right? Kind of, there are multiple examples, but still people say that the kind of impact Gen AI should create, we are still kind of struggling. Maybe they are not able to find the right problems. So there should be some kind of framework we can come up with, right, where we can find the right problem, particularly that industry. So if you can put some insights on that, I think that would really help us here.
Sure. I would say that's a very interesting question. It is of prominence for every AI practitioner in every industry. But at the same time, that's not a new question. That question is in the industry, since industry started accepting AI. If you talk about before Gen AI situations, at that time also companies were trying to face some challenge in identifying the right use case that could be solved and only be solved by AI, not by other methods, maybe like other deterministic sort of approaches. Now we have moved one step from AI to Gen AI, and the question also is continuing from AI to Gen AI. So I don't see this question as new, as I was saying, but the question is of very much prominence for every AI practitioner. So I would love to answer this, but I would like to answer this question in the enlightenment of a small example. If I have to ask everybody of every viewer of this program, how can you make 100% working train as not usable at all? You have a 100% working train or maybe an engine, but it's of zero use. If I have to ask this question, I'm not sure what people would be thinking, but to this panel, I would like to give like 2-3 seconds. But if somebody wants to make a comment, they can. But otherwise, I'll throw my idea around that. Maybe if I want to rephrase, I have a 100% working condition train or an engine. I don't want to do any changes to the train, but I want to make it 0% usable. It's not usable at all. How can we do that?
Don't give it fuel, I will say.
Okay.
Turn off the engine or put the wrong fuel into the engine.
No, we don't want to touch the engine. It's a 100% working train. We don't want to touch that, but we want to make it of no use.
Take away the tracks.
Almost there.
Maybe you can just continue and give us that answer.
Okay, thank you so much. So no platform, train is of no use. If you want to use it for cargo purpose or a domestic consumption, domestic occupancy or domestic travel or whatever it is, if you don't have a platform, how can you use it? There is no point of using, right? You just don't want to run the train here and there by just getting the driver in and just moving it. Doesn't make any sense, right? So if I apply the same analogy to Gen AI is something like a beast or a great invention. And without identifying the proper use case, this Gen AI is of no use. And the identification of proper use case is what I'm comparing with a platform to a train. Now, how do we do that? Is again, I want a little step back. We are in the industry, we are in the times of digital transformation. We are transforming businesses. And at the same time, we are not doing something new, but we are doing the things in a new way. Whichever places we are using the expertise of a subject matter expert or a domain expert or a leader in the business in the specific domain, we are trying to see if we can replace that or augment that skill with either AI or Gen AI. That's what we are trying to do, right? So it's not something new. The job is the same old job, but we want to do it in a different way, right? Now, coming back to the question, how do we identify the right use case is, as I was mentioning in my earlier answer, we need to do the decision engineering. We have to sit, somebody has to figure out what are the phases of doing some process. Maybe if I want to design a marketing campaign, what I would do without AI. Maybe I may recruit somebody who's an expert in marketing, and I ask that person to design, and maybe he puts the process through a couple of iterations, version 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. Maybe he gets into multiple reviews, and that's how he delivers the marketing campaign. And something, if you want to do identification of a sentiment analysis for a customer chat, maybe somebody would go through the chat and then he will mark it, oh, this is of a neutral sentiment, this is a positive sentiment, this is a negative sentiment. So all these situations we are trying to replace with AI and see how this AI is going to do it. So this is something we are doing the old thing in a new way. Now, Gen AI, as I was mentioning, it's not something different. The process is not something different. The identification of right use case is still the same. Somebody has to re-engineer the decision process, sit with the expert of the domain. For example, if I am an AI consultant and maybe I'm sitting next to the expert of a finance domain or some healthcare or insurance domain, I need to sit quietly, ask him to continue his day-to-day job, closely observe what he is doing, and figure out the phases or steps in his job, how he is doing, step 1, 2, 3, 4, and figure out which step is eligible to take up with the AI solution. Maybe few steps could be solved with a deterministic approach, which is not at all an AI, and few steps could be probabilistic, which is an AI, and few steps could be a little more advanced. Today we are talking about Gen AI, and tomorrow we might be adding up few steps with AGI or ASI, right? So, but the process would still remain the same. That's why I was saying this I would like to link up with decision engineering. You need to understand how the other person is taking up decisions. You need to understand what are the processes what are the steps in the process he is following through, and figure out which one is eligible under which category of a solution development, and go for it. That's all. So these are my 2 cents on how to identify the right use case. I think people are really struggling to identify that, but you ask the right word, you use the right word, framework, to identify the right use case for Gen AI. I would love to propose this as the framework for not only the current Gen AI situations or circumstances, but also the past AI and the future AGI or ASI.
That was really fantastic, Shekhar, and the way you have taken the question that yes, finding problem is not a new thing as you started with, right? And you have kind of taken it to decision engineering, and indirectly you didn't use this word pain point, but you also spoke about different people using, the technology in different way. I will put under subcategory of pain points, and from the typically what you have said is, from we should move from left to right, where we find the different marketing, different domains kind of problems, and then kind of list it, discuss with them, and then bring that decision engineering concept which you mentioned, and then come with the use cases. Again, it can be value driven use cases. The way we put up typically is that we do the cost and the kind of value kind of metrics analysis, and then typically pick up out of the 100 use cases which could be the most useful use cases, kind of we have to kind of take it up in that way, right? So with this,
One,
I think
sorry
yeah,
to cut your flow. If I have permission to add one last point.
no worries, please go ahead.
Unfortunately, in the industry, everybody is loving to understand how the train is working, but nobody is paying attention on how to construct the platform.
Correct. That is correct.
Yeah, user experience or understanding the user behavior sort of studies, and how to link up this with the implementation of AI or Gen AI solutions is the black or gray area at the moment in the industry. And that's the reason I feel personally companies are struggling to identify which use case is right for which sort of a solution.
Makes sense, Shekhar.
Thank
And
you.
definitely, I think platform, as you said, right? Ultimately, platform is gonna enable everything, including data to data quality to the application that can actually absorb the Gen AI kind of business kind of. I think that's quite insightful, and that sets also set the tone for my next question that I have for Hari. Now, as throughout this discussion, and we got multiple insight from the use cases to the RAG to the multiple things we discussed so far now, right? Now, I have been hearing a lot of urge from some of the customers. Again, they are not that having their own private LLM. So, and then there are models like Llama, coming up, which are lightweight models, right? And then we see on the other hand the likes of Microsoft, Google, they may say that in most of the cases, you may not need to really retrain the model or having your own LLM, right? So what is the perspective, I will say, in what cases, when actually we need to have our own private LLM, how much it can help, and if you have to kind of figure out, Hari, that what are the different that kind of, I will say, buy versus make scenarios kind of thing which you consider. You have a pay as you go model in OpenAI or Gemini, but when you do the private LLM, typically you have to kind of own the cost, right, entirely, right, whether it is being used or not. So how you decide all these parameters, that when to really have my own LLM versus just going with hitting the API and getting my problem solved.
Sure. Thank you, Sahil. So let me quickly introduce myself and the company that I work for. Basically, Hari, I've been solving problems in the data science and analytics space for about 8 years now, but in the industry for 25 plus years. Kind of came up the technology stack, having worked on database internals, and have come up over the up this stack over the years. I worked for Rakuten India. So basically, Rakuten fundamentally is into 4 major verticals. You can say it's the Flipkart of Japan, now desiring to be Jio of Japan as well. That's the 4th vertical. We have fintech and basically sports and media as the other verticals, right? So my responsibilities include, over the last several years, basically I've been responsible for solving problems in the catalog and the data and the analytics platform spaces, actually. And one caveat that I would like to say is, all the opinions that I'm going to share here, perspectives that I'm going to share, is very personal in nature. This is not necessarily reflective of what Rakuten is going about and solving problems. I just want to be clear there. All right, coming to your question, right? So to put things in perspective, if you look at, what is the, what went into coming out with GPT-4, and how, in terms of training and what kind of, cycles got put into developing GPT-4. This is unconfirmed reports on the net. Apparently 25,000 GPUs, NVIDIA A100 GPUs went into training the data for about 100 days, right? This is the the gamut of what it takes to come out with the generic LLMs, right? Clearly, not many companies in the world will have the wherewithal to be able to come out with their own LLMs. Of course, companies have taken that approach. For example, outside of the FANG companies, Microsoft, right, Bloomberg did that. Again, if you have the wherewithal to do it, there is a way to go about it. Sure, all of them potentially looked at a common substrate. They looked at data sets which are there on common crawl or the pile or a few other places, right, which is the common data that was used to train these models. As I said, cost is a very important aspect to it. While saying that, well, having said that, I think most of the companies which may not have the wherewithal, that includes even pretty big companies, would be taking what I call as a middle of the road approach, wherein you start your journey with an open source LLM. It could be your Llama 2, it could be some variants of Gemini or Flan 5, or their variants, right? And on top of that, right, you could use 2 distinct methodologies that already Biju and Vinay basically alluded to, right? One is the fine-tuning aspect of it, because an LLMs, right? I mean, this is when GPT 3.5, ChatGPT, when it was rolled out, right? One of the things that was very clearly said by the OpenAI guys is, look, we cannot guarantee for the ethical nature of it, right? Or the validate correctness. That's where a human would need to be in the loop, and it comes under the category of what is called as reinforced learning with human in the loop. So you would essentially need to do that, and the approach, a perspective that most companies I feel will take is take an open source LLM, use the what is called as the RLHF, use the reinforced learning to human in the loop, and essentially do fine tuning. Okay, so that you remove out any unethical stuff or insidious kind of stuff or things along those lines, and probably use RAG as well, retrieval augmented generation, wherein invariably, right, even though you would have fine tuned with your company specific data, there's always a chance that the corpus will get outdated. That's the nature of the beast, right? That's where you might want to do not only take an open source LLM, augment it with fine tuning with your own company specific data, and perhaps use a combination of RAG as well. And that is where using a combination of all the three would essentially work out for many cases. And clearly cost being a very important thing, that's something most companies would do. You try to benchmark with what it takes to host them internally versus what does it mean to go out to a GPT 3.5 or a 4. Cost obviously comes to the picture, but there is always company specific data which you cannot and you don't want to put it out, and that's where you would want to weigh one against the other. And like many things complex, it's an optimization problem based on dimensions like cost, wherewithal, capabilities. One would go about choosing either a completely paid for closed source LLMs, or develop one completely from scratch. That's the other end of the spectrum, or somewhere in the middle, use these technologies and put in place and go about that. Those are my thoughts on this problem. Yeah.
Yep, I completely agree, Hari. Thanks for this really different perspective, especially 2 points you mentioned on the companies when they are looking for their data, right? It's a private data, obviously your product data, your services, and all the things. So no one would like to or would want to keep it on a public domain. And then while doing that, the only option you have it is like do a private LLM models, but it comes with cost. So one has to really do a mix and match of both the aspects while looking at the security and privacy. Yes, they will definitely go for it. So in the same context, maybe my next question is for Raj. So Raj, what do you think that when we are considering what are the potential drawbacks and constraints that should be recognized, especially when depending on a Gen AI, right, to tackle extensive challenges within the analytics platform construction sector, right? So additionally, maybe if you can provide some further elaboration on this topic as well.
Sure, Vidyadhar. Thanks for that question. Yeah. So Gen AI being the new kid in the block, it's still not mature, and nobody understands it completely, and the way it is going to, nobody can predict how it is going to behave in the future. But it is very key that we understand the limitations and risks of Gen AI, so that we can employ it in the right way, right? Without that, we'll be running into cost risks or performance risks, ethical issues, etc., which would actually be detrimental to the business and to the employees and customers as well. Right? Given these factors, there are many limitations and things that come up on a regular basis, but I would like to touch upon 5 or 6 elements that are, currently very key in terms of understanding Gen AI. First one is bias and fairness. I think Biju had touched upon it, right? So, especially on the data that the model is getting trained on, and now there is a new issue of copyrighted material. I was listening to one of very interesting podcast where a famous American author was complaining that OpenAI was using her novels to train their models on, and if ChatGPT obviously ChatGPT is a commercialized app, and if they start earning money on that, there'll be copyright issues, right? So these are some of the key things that come up now and then that needs to be taken care of. Then there is ethical concerns. There are 7 dimensions to ethics in Gen AI. I would like to use acronym of POTOMAC for these 7 dimensions. These 7 dimensions being privacy, ownership, algorithmic traceability, objectivity, misuse, accuracy, and consent. Right? These 7 elements, they may be separate dimensions, but there's some overlap between them. But we need to consider these limitations as well. Of course, the overfitting of the data, of the training data. I mean, this is right from our good old ML days. We know that the model performs very well in the training data, but when it comes to real world, it doesn't. So that is something we need to consider and take it as a limitations and see how we can solve it. If we are implementing really large models, the cost could be prohibitive. Depending on the number of parameters, the billions of parameters that we're going to use, the compute power, and the GPUs that we're going to use. So I would always suggest to start small and then expand, see the ROI, track the ROI, and then expand. And there is a question of hallucination, which could be kind of mitigated through RAG with grounded, data. That's another element that we may have to look into it. And the recency of data is another thing which needs to be considered. If your Gen AI is expected to perform or give information about latest happenings or latest data, then it needs to be regularly trained on, periodically trained on the latest data or the latest material. That is another limitation that you might want to consider. Last but not least, the social acceptance of Gen AI. There are a lot of, whether it does it or not, but there are a lot of perceptions in the society in large that AI could steal the jobs, or there could be a lot of privacy issues, ethical issues, etc. So that consideration, that risks have to be mitigated before even considering employing Gen AI as well. So these are some of the points that I wanted to touch upon as limitations and risks in implementing Gen AI.
Very right, Raj. You have mentioned the Gen AI obviously being although we are saying it's for a year or so, approximately since the time it has come into the market, but it's a new kid in the industry today, and obviously no one knows when will it behave, in what sense, right? So considering that, very right points you have mentioned on the bias and fairness and so on and so forth. So maybe with this, Hari, I would like to go with the next question, specific to e-commerce industry, right? So how do you think that Gen AI being used in this industry, or maybe if you can highlight some of the use cases around that?
Sure. Thank you, Vidyadhar. So a few things that come to mind. One is let us take up customer reviews, right? Typically, when we go, and let's consider within India, right, Flipkart or Amazon.in. So typically we see, before we obviously make a purchase, we look at customer reviews. And one of the things that typically is there is a quantifiable score, out of 5 stars, right? That is one metric. The other thing is there is a qualitative, reviews that are put out there as well. But as an end purchaser, right, and especially nowadays with the the time that we have at our disposal, one thing that would be of use, I think maybe some of the e-commerce companies might have already started to do that, is a condensed or a summarized portion of customer reviews, right? Out of the 2,000 reviews that have come out for a product, just to give an example, right, a summarized review in 10 or 20 lines will go a long way, right? And an objective summarized view, and that here is one place straight off the bat, Gen AI, any one of these LLM models, can add a lot of value. That's from the customer perspective. Now, going back to the product perspective, right? E-commerce, depending on the e-commerce provider that one is, you would be dealing with several hundred to a billion products that are out there, right? So, but then there are a lot of housekeeping that needs to happen with respect to the shopping catalog, right? One of the things that is, done is when the products are onboarded onto the e-commerce site, there is manufacturer information, there is merchant information, they're all ingested into the catalog, right? And it's humanly impossible and also not cost effective to be able to involve a human for ingestion of all the products or its variants. And that is where models, ML and deep learning models, have been deployed for several years to be able to do one of the many things, right? Things like, for example, to be able to extract what are called as essential attributes. One could be, size could be an attribute, a price could be an attribute, right? Dimensions, you name it, right? So there have been models, which have been used well before LLMs, right? But they used to essentially solve, one specific problem at a time, right? And of course, from conception to deployment, there used to be a lot of time because you had to use what is called as your golden set data, develop your ML or DL model, validate it and whatnot. Now the beauty of LLMs that are out there is you can, through prompt engineering, and cost permitting, conception to deployment, the time has been significantly being cut down, right? One would be able to do attribute extraction, pull out useful attributes from the description, from whatever the merchant provides for or whatever the manufacturer provides for. That's one classical example, right? Yet another classical example is again from the catalog perspective, right? Basically what happens is most of the catalog information is essentially fed into what is called as the search index, so that when the end customer comes and looks for whatever he or she is looking for, it comes up and matches, and there's a search relevancy, right? About 80% or so from what the industry says comes through searches, but another 20% apparently comes through what is called as faceted searching, wherein one might want to go, what is it that I'm buying for? Yeah, it comes under the electronics category. Yeah, under electronics, is it computer, is it TVs and whatnot? So you kind of follow this thing, and this in the industry it is called as essentially taxonomy, right? A nomenclature to capture these things. So genre classification is another problem wherein humans were involved, and that's where ML and DL models are also involved to be able to classify a certain product, right? Now that is where LLMs could potentially be used as well. So these are some of the use cases that come to mind, wherein especially when you're dealing with a huge corpus of data, LLMs, especially from conception to deployment cycle being very small, this is a great way to do it. Of course, cost is always a dimension one needs to factor. Those are my thoughts on this. Yeah, thank you.
Maybe, if I may, I can add one use case from the enterprise application world.
Sure.
In line with what Hari you said. So it's regarding customer complaints. In transportation and warehouse management topics. When a customer has a complaint in the past, what used to happen is the dispatch clerk has to figure out why the shipment has not happened. Yeah? Suppose somebody did not receive the item. So then he has to search where the stock is available, right? You might be spending a few hours to figure it out and solve the issues. Preparing for shipment and notifying the person in the dispatch office to ship it from another location or another country. Now what happens is, as soon as the customer complaint is raised, you will be able to get a summarized information what exactly happened. You'll be able to figure out that, okay, stock is not available in X location. So the next step, when you drill down, you'll be able to understand, okay, the stock is available in Y location for the same item. Then the next drill down, you will be able to notify the dispatch clerk in that Y location to prepare for a dispatch immediately. So these are all going to happen in 5 minutes. So earlier, something that used to happen, search, summarization, aggregation, all used to take few hours. It happens in 5 minutes. So the customer complaint resolution happens in, so fast. So that's one of the best use cases I've seen with this technology.
Fantastic. And then definitely this will help us to even improve the supply chain operations as well while looking at the customer end. Yeah. Vinay, you have anything to add here?
No, multiple things which people need to take into account. Like, I mean, of course, we got a lot of perspective about what you can do from the e-commerce perspective from the front end, but behind the scenes, managing the inventory, the warehouses, the supply chain, everything. That's where also Gen AI will play a big role. The reason being is that you can actually start to simplify the way people use systems. That barriers are slowly going away. I don't need to be an expert in an ERP system to be able to use it. I should be able to, even just ask a simple query and get an answer. And another thing which probably has caught on more, probably in the West, and is just coming, growing over here in countries like India, is the use of voice. I know there are a bunch of people who use Alexa, but even if when you compare it to people over there, we're still a minuscule number, right? So you don't even have to sit down and type something. All you're doing is clicking a button and saying, "Can you tell me the status of this?" And you get a perfect answer, up-to-date answer. You're using generative AI at the back end, so your information is correct if you have trained your model correctly. So that's probably where this is all heading towards finally, right? You're finally going to be having almost like a Jarvis from Iron Man, where you can just talk to them and get answers. And I think that's what you're finally going to start seeing in terms of what's going on.
Fantastic. Right. Right. And Sridevi, would you like to add the same perspective of the use cases in the automotive industry?
Yeah, sure. So I think the supply chain example was very, very valid and very easily adaptable to the automotive industry as well. So one of the key things that stands out in the automobile industry is predictive maintenance, right? And that's one space where AI and generative AI can lend a lot of help in speeding up the ability to find what could possibly go wrong with the vehicle, and then help the customer not face a downtime. And while in passenger cars, it's that there is a possible way to get to the nearest workshop to be able to solve your problem. That's not so seamless in a commercial vehicle or a truck, especially when you imagine trucks running for thousands of kilometers in a country as big as the US. It's not easy, and it's a lot of cost implications when a truck has a downtime. So it's very, very important to be able to see how we can leverage AI and Gen AI in the space of predictive maintenance to avoid that downtime and help customers keep their vehicle on track on time. So that one use case that comes to my mind.
Right. Perfect.
And that's really helpful. And the way I think we have heard multiple answers, multiple speakers coming up and telling the part on how these use cases will come, and the way from the customer experience to supply chain to tracking. So everything we have covered, right? And Sridevi, since you have covered that automobile part, right? Now, if you see, largely, if you read multiple analyst report like McKinsey or kind of industry leaders, they're all talking about now ESG, right? Which is about the climate and everything.
Yeah.
And since you picked up the automobile as a kind of as your example, and if you see in India, typically we are blaming always automobile for the climate, though there are multiple other aspects, factory polluting. Then we have the dust,
Right.
and there are sort of thing. Then you will say that stubble burning. There are so many things happening now, right? And with the India taking, kind of net zero target by 2070, again, we had that private Paris, climate summit back in 2015, where India kind of committed it that we will be going net zero as soon as, we can. But though it's very, very, necessary, we saw that, during Diwali time, that, stubble burning, Delhi was not able to breathe, right? And we, somewhere we have to reach where we can kind of, help the climate with the generative AI. So it's easy to say than do, because when you kind of move from this normal that brown kind of fuel to your green fuels kind of industry, so it's typically cost driven. It's not even today you're trying to create the green hydrogen, it's expensive, right? So the expectation now is, if I can move in very, very slow way, having some kind of predictability, some kind of guidance, some kind of decision making from the Gen AI. So how do you feel that Gen AI can actually help us to build up the better climate models, understand things what's happening underneath, and maybe help the industry to have that smooth transition and kind of align to that net zero target, and which will be beneficial larger as a world, and to have a better place to live. Over to you, Sridevi.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. That's a very, very important question, I think, in the current generation that we live. So the question has two parts to it, right? How can Gen AI help build climate models? But Gen AI by itself is also adding to a lot of not sustainable ways of, using intense compute powers. Why Gen AI being so large and massive from the way it is constructed. So I'll answer that in two parts. One is lot of these climate models are traditionally are mathematical, or like Sekhar put it, deterministic models. And there are some flaws that come in inherently with deterministic models. And it is important then to utilize the AI kind of concepts to understand the complexity or dynamics between these large variables that people collect across land, air, atmosphere, ice, sea, ocean parameters, right? That they are trying to model this climate over. Now, it's massive data, and there is massive complexity in the way the attributes are dynamically interacting with each other. So deep learning kind of concepts surely help a scenario of this kind. And Gen AI definitely is a way that I see where we could use in simulating the scenarios to understand climate behavior better. And when we are attempting to do that, generative AI, as it's known to be able to create images, you could create climate behavior image scenarios for scientists to understand these dynamics and predict the with higher accuracies in climate models. And the duality that exists in the climate models is, while we are trying to use Gen AI and AI, there is also massive compute that we are intending to use, which is against the philosophy of the climate sustainability itself. So large companies have understood that we live in this duality. So that's why there is a lot more focus now on building small models. And like one of them is the small language models, but there are also there is intense or a lot of work that is happening in the area of building focused small models that can be used for these kind of purposes. And people are also looking at running their clouds data centers with more green power instead of being non-sustainable or not green in their initiatives. So those are the attempts that are being made. While I think we are a little far away from solving it fully, there is a lot going on in that space across the world in that direction.
Yep. And then, very well concluded, Sridevi. Thank you for this. With this, I think we are coming towards the time check for today's discussion. Obviously, we had different perspective, different domains, different backgrounds, what we are coming from into this Gen AI world today. So I thank each and everyone, especially Hari. Also, you mentioned a lot of e-commerce today's challenges and how we can leverage in Gen AI for these problem solving things, right? And Sekhar, definitely the railway platforming example will definitely keep. I mean, we will remember when it comes to our day-to-day work life as well. That's a very valid point. So with this,
I did it in a fun way.
but yeah, it strikes strikes somewhere. So with this, I really thank everyone, all of you, for taking time out for today's roundtable discussion on Gen AI. Definitely, it is an evident that the potential for this technology in the today's analytics industry is vast. Uh, However, it is also crucial for all of us to acknowledge and address the potential risk and limitations which are associated with the widespread implementation when it comes to the deployment adoption, right? And obviously, while the Gen AI offers a lot of remarkable capabilities for innovation and problem solving, we must also remain vigilant about the issues such as ethical consideration, you all very well mentioned, data privacy, and the need for human oversight also in the critical decision-making processes, right? So by recognizing these challenges and working collaboratively to mitigate them, we can really harness the full potential of Gen AI today, while upholding the values, integrity, responsibility, and transparency within our respective industries and domains. So with this closing note, I thank you once again for all taking time out, and have a good day.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.